that means he's going to stitch you up.
Oh,
So the winking is the sign.
yeah.
It's when they start giggling like 3-year-old girls, I know I've been set up.
On ours, we say we can't afford not to record. That's the indication we're rolling.
Right.
Typically, it works out like that, but not every time.
I was gonna say Billy's is just kind of like
It's a quick wink.
yeah, and you just roll on with it. And then about 5 minutes in, he just starts grinning that grin.
Well, Simon talks his best stuff before we start recording
Oh, I
all
know.
the time, and you never get a chance.
I've been a bit
Well, this
subdued, though, this afternoon.
This has been, I was going to say, this is a tame conversation. So I feel like
trust me,
now that the
closing
now
out
it's rolling.
chaos last night didn't help.
I mean, he wouldn't even admit his age. So to put age to what he done last night probably wouldn't even make sense. I mean, it makes sense as to why he's dragging today. I mean,
I can tell you why he's dragging
you
today.
should
It
really
wasn't just
be in the
last night;
hospital.
it was the day before too.
He should really be in the hospital with an IV and a wheelchair. I mean,
Well, that's
a
all.
bare minimum of a Zimmer frame.
age comes for us all. You know,
Oh,
there was
it
one,
does.
one point in my life where like drinking late at night would cause trouble. Now getting up too fast is an issue. You don't just hop up in the morning.
I'm not but 33, and yes, I have some of those issues.
It's
They
coming.
get worse. Just saying.
They do.
I always,
yeah, they do.
I always like the term, you never slow down, you never grow old, but I can't keep that pace.
I have a bit of a cheeky expression.
All right.
You're as old as the woman you feel. Was that a bit risque this early in the evening?
Well,
Perhaps.
we'll let the listeners decide because we've been rolling for
There
about
we-
2 minutes now.
Oh well,
so.
I knew I'd get caught in a trap somewhere. There you go. You've got your sound bite, Billy.
Well, I had
Carry
to.
on.
That's what we live for.
He hit the record button when I winked at Darnell.
Yeah.
You
should have
it
been
was
paying
a
attention.
transferred the wink.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Timcast IRL Studios. And if you don't know,
It's got a lovely ring to it,
yeah,
doesn't
I mean,
it?
it has to. The money had a nice ring to it as well. Not saying we'll just whore ourselves out from anybody, but there were no stipulations to that money. As we said before, so I decided that's the least thing I could do is go send y'all towards his podcast. It's Timcast RL. You can find it on all the podcasting apps and timcast.com. You can go there and be supporters. I got a nightly show, so no big competition with us. And they always bring on a bunch of different people, have good conversations, and they're pretty moderate, middle of the road. A lot of, politically speaking, a tad bit left of but not by much. So, you know, it's in the middle, essentially. So it's a really good show, and they're building culture up there, doing really good things. And so go check him out. I'm your host, Billy Riddle, and I'm joined again for night number 3 in a row of drinking and socializing with my hungover co-host.
Rather, I wouldn't say I was shockingly hungover. I just feel slightly degraded.
Shockingly hungover.
Shockingly hungover.
Well,
I mean, at
there's-
your age, it should, and as much as you drink, it should not be shockingly about that.
Well, I've gone through a number of shocking hangovers, and this doesn't even touch close. So,
We have to have a Simon special because I want you to share the run that you had with you and your buddy and the police station and the horse station,
oh Lord,
because how you tell it is so hilarious. I'm telling you, there's a lot of good drinking stories, and this one would rank like number 1 or 2 that I've heard. And it's not just for the fact that you were able to evade while you were probably as drunk as you've ever been. But it's where you ended up and were still able to evade.
a significant police force. Yeah, I mean, dogs, cars, foot patrol, helicopter, Range Rover, and they were really upset that they didn't get me.
Wow.
and done most of it on foot, I might add.
Yeah, we had to because we
You lost your ride.
the Range Rover we were in got high. What is it? Where it was up on caught on a bank, and it was tipping. We got, what is it called, Billy?
Tipping?
I mean, it was high sided or something where it's rocking.
What are you talking about?
I got a Range Rover stuck, and
they tried to go up one side of a mountain and down the other side, and it got stuck at the tip top.
Oh, you bottomed out.
Yeah.
Bottomed out at the top, though.
Yeah.
You got to bottom out. That's where to do it.
And Range Rovers are pretty tricky to get stuck. So we actually accomplished something, I suppose, but it put us in a more precarious position because then we were on foot. But I'll save that for another day. Yeah, well.
And you have to be, I'm not saying you should drink, but you have to be pretty relaxed to tell that story because there's only one way to tell it.
Oh, yeah.
And the way I heard it, it makes it even more funny. Yeah.
It was a good one. There's been a few of those. But
we'll get to it one of these.
One of these days
when we get him nice and right, we'll be able to get the whole thing.
True.
Yeah, the true one. With that being said, we're being joined again, as y'all can tell, by our good friends Brian and Darnell. We've had them on last year around this time, so it's great to have them on here once a year, gentlemen. They are. We're here to talk about all the same things we talked about last time, expand on that, the new things, because we like these kind of, but at the same time, they also have a new podcast as well. So we want to talk about that, about how you can listen to them and kind of what that whole deal is. Then, of course, our mediator here tonight, Chocolate Drop, Chris Montgomery, is back in the mix. And I feel like he can ride the fence here and stick on, because he can bring a different perspective. And then we've got Sam over in the corner pushing, well, not even pushing, but he's picking his nose, but he's just kind of hanging out over here. I wish we had some buttons for him to push. Maybe if everybody would go to patreon.com/getontap and become a subscriber for $3 a month, we could afford to get cameras and start videoing some of this and get Simon clips up, because that's all the world needs is clips of Simon on. I don't even have TikTok. I have to get somebody to get TikTok, but for me and upload them. But for Instagram, whatever, we need the clips. So at patreon.com/getontap, you get to be a subscriber. You can also go to our Patreon. You also go to our X page at Get On Tap, and they have links there right on the page to our Venmo and Cash App, which are both at Get On Tap, and maybe my PayPal, which is WB Riddle. So one-time donation if you want to do that. I've applied for a subscriber tab on X, and I'm still waiting to hear back. It took them a while to verify me. Again, we release all our shows on Facebook, but Facebook is complete BS. Unless I pay them money to advertise a post, they will not share it to anybody. Like I made a post the other day talking about the 150-year special at Rocky Mount. Not one like.
Bottom of my feed.
Not one. But if I pay them $5 or $6, usually I pay like $15 to promote our shows. Now, if I don't do it, they won't put it, no matter where I post it at. I can post in a group of 700,000 people and post the prettiest picture you ever seen and 2 likes maybe. Twitter, on the other hand, X, I get all kinds of engagement. I'm talking, 50, 100, comments, 200 likes, depending on the post, and Twitter pays me money. So I encourage everybody to go out there and get on Twitter, or X. I keep calling it, or Twix. Let's call it Twix. So that's where I encourage everybody to go to. But for us,
right or left,
either one, whatever one that tickles your fancy. So yeah, you can go to patreon.com/getontap. Help us buy the cameras so we can give Sam a job over here, because he's a disheveled, unemployed truck driver. Actually, he's not unemployed. He just works for a company that's not quite as professional and full of integrity as I and my company is. So, can't mention who they are on this show because of the lunatics out there. But that being said,
he
welcome
don't drive
everybody.
a blue and green one, does he?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
So patreon.com/getontap or at getontap for Venmo and Cash App. Brian and Darnell, welcome back.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all. Been a big fan. I love listening to your shows. It really helps me when I'm driving the truck during the day, going down the road, take my attention away from screaming at traffic when I'm screaming at y'all sometimes, saying, what in the hell are they? But I like it, though, because it gives me a different perspective. So let's start from there. The name of the podcast is Misunderstood. First off, where can everybody find it at?
About everywhere. Spotify is probably the easiest place that where I particularly find it, but I know we're on Apple Music. I've got a Facebook page. That was the piece of advice you gave me. I'm not great at pumping out the social media. I'll make sure I push that a little bit more. But anywhere you look, there we are. It's Misunderstood, and Misunderstood FC sometimes gets you a little bit closer. And we got to figure out a way to get a little bit more striking branding, because there's two brothers on the picture. So if you see the two of us, you know it's the right podcast. But we got to figure out a way to get it so it stands out a little more against the other misunderstoods. I think we're the only talk misunderstood, but there's some other like books and audio things like that available.
Right quick, an app. I started having problems. I used to I would Google Appalachian Podcast and watch it through Google, and then my phone went through some kind of funny update, and it would play until the screen went black, and then it would shut off, and then I would have to go back and try and restart it.
That's a setting, surely.
So I found it's a podcast player, and I think the name of it is.
Well,
it said Castbox a while ago.
Castbox.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, that's one.
And I've been able to find y'all show, and
well, a lot of those like Castbox are still fall under the Apple umbrella, I believe, because when I went on Buzzsprout, I signed up to get on a bunch of these platforms, and some of them, like that one, I didn't, but I'm on there. Like I'm on Fountain as well. A lot of places it tied to these other places. So
yeah, but I that one works pretty good. I mean, my phone it'll run till it's dead, and if you get a phone call, it'll actually back up like 10 seconds and start to play again.
Oh, that is nice.
And little stuff like that I've noticed about it. I really like it.
Huh.
Okay,
that's another place you can find it at.
Yeah, it's a good time to jump in because, like I said, the activism we've always been involved in is going into spaces and seeking out those different opinions. So that's a big part of what we're pushing right now. We're on a really interesting kind of run through the school board, Franklin County School Board and Franklin County Board of Supervisors meetings, going through the 3-minute comment sections.
Oh dear.
Kind of replaying this whole story that Franklin County went through. I hate that COVID really gave us this opportunity, but prior to COVID, much of the NAACP was going in and talking about the Confederate flags. And so it would have been really interesting to be able to start from that point, but the county never thought to record those things at that point because there was no need.
They didn't archive any of that.
They didn't record. We didn't have cameras. We didn't have cameras. We didn't have audios.
Okay.
When COVID came around, they had to put those things out to the public. That's when the cameras came in. And then there's almost a full year of just terrible sound. And IT gets it right by the end of the year. They know exactly what they're doing. Everything's beautiful in both places. So we're picking up about that point, and we called you out in one episode. We tried to save names, so I get rid of the names and the addresses.
It can't be helped, I'm afraid. I mean, a case in point was we were walking through the Rocky Mount parade that happened on Saturday. And we just got stopped in the street, and it was all down to my accent. And there were several people who just came up and went, "You're the dude. You're the dudes on the Appalachian Pop." I went, "Oh, here we go. How do you know? Well, it's your accent." Yep. Okay. Done.
Yep.
I think that's how I felt the first time I heard you at the soccer game. I was like, that voice. It sounds familiar. The school boards. School board meetings.
Yeah.
My precious. Let's jump in right there.
Huh?
Let's jump in right there.
Jump in where? We're still talking about their podcast. I will get back to that real quick.
Yeah. That is, though, I think the idea of not creating a safe space, but creating a brave space where we can talk about absolutely anything is kind of the goal. We don't really get hard feelings over things. And I think in most cases, we're really analytical. So if there is an issue that others might, yell racism or scream sexism, most of the time we can get to the root issue behind it.
Yeah.
And
they're not sitting here having this conversation.
Right. But they'll listen in. When they listen in, they'll get a chance to see and maybe have a more articulate argument.
Yeah. That's
well,
right.
the thing I like about y'all's show is when you listen to it, y'all really do a really good job of pulling back and seeing things from multiple directions. You're not, and so many people out here have this problem. They get reactionary and they just start screaming into the microphone their opinion. But you guys do, you're very thoughtful about it. And you might say something, and Brian, you might disagree, or Brian, you might say something, and you'll have slight disagreements about it and about your perception of it. And even if it's something controversial that most of the time, people that you all represent might look at one of y'all and be like, the hell are you talking? You know what I mean? Like, but y'all go, we do the same thing. So I enjoy tuning in and getting that perspective. Why'd y'all decide to start it? What was it that I'm fishing for compliments?
And you're going to get one.
I'm kidding. I'm definitely kidding.
There are definitely two places that I think we can say is yours and Cast Therapy.
I like that guy. He's got a good perspective too. A good perspective.
Yes,
I can't remember his name, but
he's got was it like a 3-minute song, and he hits play. He talks to the end of the song and closes it out. It's amazing. So it's a good way if you've got a short trip somewhere, throw on Cast Therapy. You'll be done with it by the time you hit the end. Cortland Roscoe.
Yep.
He sent us the equipment. You got us talking in front of the mics and laying out an opinion. And I think between the two of you, that's the reason we've started this.
Well, I'm glad we talk about y'all all the time on here and try and send people over y'all's way, because everybody needs to, especially around here locally, like corporate media, whether it be Fox, CNN, let's not split it. It's all garbage. It's not even news anymore. I think it's even considered entertainment. It's kind of like TV. I mean, that's what it's actually labeled as. So, if you want to listen to some national stuff, go find you some good independent media, no matter what side of the aisle or whatever you're looking for. But if you're looking for local stuff, tune in to Brian and Darnell. You're going to get their perspective on what's going on. Tune in to us. You can get our perspective. I know Greg James, a GJ Beat podcast on a couple of weeks ago, he's got his own perspective, talking, a lot more of the exercise and stuff, but he's actually come around to doing some different things. So, I encourage everybody to go out there and do it and listen and support your local people, because, your local community is where it's really at. Those are the people that you have to count on. Those are people you have to deal with. When the crap hits a fan, what does somebody in Indiana who's arguing with me online got anything? You know what I mean? Like, I need to go to my neighbor. I need to go to y'all. Y'all need to come to us. If, it starts hitting the fan here, a hurricane comes through, or, God help, we're invaded. We're all the rest of the shit goes out the window at that. You know what I mean? So, I support your local.
We can affect, and don't underestimate. We can affect the local situation.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about just politically. I mean, culturally, you name it. I think we can have an impact. It can be a positive impact. It can also be a negative impact.
Yeah.
But, we can affect change.
Yeah.
Well, I know when I'm driving down the road, and there's probably 100 of them, but one that sticks out the most is the one I wanted to ask y'all about. And
fire away.
Before we get to it, this is going to be it's not going to be a big controversy. I just have to wonder why do you not like the Hodge boys? What's the deal with them? Y'all was giving them some hell a couple weeks ago. Those are my boys. They're from Collinsville, right?
Yeah. I steep myself in as best I can conservative media, and so one of the requests was to start listening to Black conservative media, and so the Hodge twins and Candace Owens were kind of the first places I went.
Not a big fan of Candace. She is very controversial, and I don't know what's a good word to describe her.
In both cases, it seems like they do their best to find the worst parts of Black culture and act as if that is the primary. Mm-hmm. That's what all of Black culture is. I think I enjoy them a little bit more. One, they've got a really short segment, but and I think I've said. There's a lot of discussion by the two of them. I don't know which one's which about
here we go
gay culture.
I know it's good. Yep, I knew this was going.
Like to the point where one of them knows something about gay culture, and I think that always worries me, because it's the same way being Black and spending time attacking being Black makes you more vicious. Because I have an inside track, so I can attack being Black a little bit easier. And the same thing worries me about the way they attack gay culture, is that there feels like an inside understanding of it, and they're attacking it in a way that makes it more vulnerable. And I think because I don't have that great an understanding of gay culture, I am just catching it. So I'm like, if I needed ammunition, this is probably the place I could go for that. And that makes me uncomfortable about them.
Well, and honestly, I think, now, once again, to pull yourselves back and think about it, I think there's a lot of people on the other side that can feel the same way you do about him, that, there's so many people out there that like you try to immerse yourself, and I try and listen to some liberal leaning stuff, and there's so much of this, hatred for the white person for this and this, and it's all about white people. It's not about the individual, and that's by white people. I don't hear Black people saying. I don't hear Asian people saying. I don't hear Hispanic people saying. I hear other white people and it's like, just like you said, they're finding the worst aspects of things that happen throughout history, and they're trying to pin it on, a certain thing. So, we feel you on that, and that's good, because everybody, they want to.
Well, that's exploitation.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, that's the one word that fits that, right? It's exploitation, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And any exploitation is not a positive adjective. It's certainly not in the framework that we're discussing it.
And that, I think, overall gets to one of the, I think coming in, we knew there were three kind of questions we wanted to ask. And the first one was just that, is where do you get your media? Because where do you, because I know my media sources.
Well, we have some inside sources, of
Well,
course.
it depends on what media you're talking about. Are you talking about my opinions locally? Are you talking about my opinions and the things we talk about nationally? Are you talking about what kind of...
Well, and I'll give you my example because I kind of prepared it anyways. But, I get up in the morning and it's either WDBJ7 or WSLS.
Okay, none.
And catch the local folks. I love Melissa Gaonu. Part of the reason I got to your podcast is I saw her on there and I just absolutely love her. So this is way back. This is the first episode I ever heard.
She is a phenomenal
was because of her.
Being.
So I love my local news. I love my local newscasters. I watch the two depending on the weather for some reason. Like in the fall, I get one, and in the winter, I get another because I'm all antenna. So no cable news. In the car, it's Hannity in the afternoon. When I go home, I'm 100% Hannity.
I struggle with Hannity. I really do because
you and me both.
It's repetition.
It is.
I don't like
it is.
But it's to a point of repetition.
Repetition makes truth.
And that doesn't work.
I
mean, you drive the point home,
Mm-hmm.
and you're hitting the same hammer.
Yes,
hitting the same nail with the same hammer again and again and again. And at that point, it loses its.
And it's like a 3-hour segment.
Yeah.
So he's on from the time I get off of work until I drop my kid off. 3 to 6 until I drop my kid off.
It's a parrot fashion delivery. And quite frankly, I don't even find it entertaining. I don't necessarily find it factual either.
I find it entertaining. Like I said, if I'm in the car, because it's in the afternoon, Sean Hannity is my media source. On the internet, Tim Pool, I caught through David. What's his name? Patrick.
Something Patrick.
Yeah, let me.
Brett Patrick David.
Oh, Ben, I do like him.
David, something like that.
He's from Valuetainment. I listen to Valuetainment quite a bit. That's in terms of how to talk to each other. That is a really, really great segment to watch.
Have you listened to much Glenn Beck?
I used to love Glenn Beck when I had cable. I used to watch Glenn Beck all the time. I'd switch between Glenn Beck and Rachel Maddow. Okay. Glenn Beck came on one day and said, I'm going to solve the financial issues in this country. And I was like, man, I'm in for this because I know we spend 40% over budget, and most of that is military and Social Security, both programs almost every American loves. So I said, however he solves this is going to make people angry. And he spent the week saying he was going to do that, and the next week he didn't do it. He just switched to something else.
Oh,
yeah,
I wonder what forced
that bothered me. But that's not the reason I stopped watching him, because he's also very entertaining. I stopped watching him because we got rid of cable.
What about Clay and Buck?
Clay and Buck are in the morning. So since I listen to the same in the afternoon, since I listen to Hannity in the afternoon, it's usually on in the morning when I go to work. But I'm getting 4 minutes. In the afternoons when I do all my driving. I just get enough time to go to work.
So now, do you just list solely to I guess to Fox News as your media outlet?
No.
What other
NPR?
NPR? Okay.
Sundays.
Not. I actually, I used to listen to, my news was all NPR. And then I kind of got off of that and then started listening to Glenn Beck and Clay and Travis. And a lot of it depends on whether or not I was in the tractor or not.
Mm-hmm.
And here in the last year, I've tried to listen to a little bit of both.
That is a dichotomy, because NPR is like, in the news today, we're going over. And then Glenn Beck's like, listen, it's going to go crazy if you don't invest in gold.
It is.
You've just proven you do listen to Glenn Beck.
Oh, yeah.
I absolutely was a fan. Now that he's on the radio, I just don't, whatever time he's on, I think it looks like 9, it's late morning.
What is it, 9?
From 9 o'clock.
It's 12 to 3 is Clay and Buck. So it's from 9 to 12 is
by then I'm at work. Back. And that's when I switch to podcasts. I'm catching everybody on the internet if I have a chance to sit.
But I'll be honest with you, here lately, I turn on Pandora and either play bluegrass or rock or hip hop. I mean, I cover everything. I mean, I see what it's coming to. I feel it in my day-to-day life, my wallet, my grocery bills. And nobody is really coming up with a solution in my eyes, other than let's get back to drilling on our own land. I mean, is your fuel bill higher than it was?
Yes.
I mean, so we were drilling, and I mean, life was good. $60 for 100 gallons of fuel or something. 30 gallons of fuel for $65. Now it costs me $175 to $200 for my truck. That's a hard, and I watched it climb month. I watched it climb. So the president controls the price of fuel. No, he doesn't. Well, when we were drilling on our own land before we stopped drilling, fuel was relatively cheap. So let's go back to something that was working.
Well, and what makes you believe we've stopped?
Well, I see all the pipeliners. They disappeared. That was shut down by federal government and lawsuits.
Yeah, a lot of leases have not been renewed or made available.
Yes.
The fact that
and the thing, what happens there? I mean, I'm former oil and gas, right? What happens there is you are handing over control to the Saudis, and their bidding game, and theirs is all about market share. And market share, when you control or you protect market share, and they have the ability to do that, and they do it very aggressively. And we've given them the keys, to the control box there. I think we've put ourselves in an enormous amount of trouble by doing that.
Well, if you want to know my opinion, and back to you, what you asked about media, I don't watch TV really.
Okay.
The only thing I really watch is at nighttime after everybody goes to bed. I might go in there on the couch for like an hour and I'll watch an episode of Black Mirror, which is kind of like the modern day Twilight Zone. Or if I'm sitting up here in the studio working or something, I'll put it on my British app and I watch some British TV to try and see if I can understand Simon a little bit more. And I really can't, because like we said before, there's only two speeds over there. It's either the best stuff you've ever seen or it's the most god-awful thing you've ever, and there's no in between. There's no like, oh, I could probably watch that. It's either my God or that's amazing.
Are you sure you're not trying to catch Simon giving a CIA speech?
No. I mean, because not on these shows. I think he's a little too big for some of these shows. Doc Martin is one of them, and then the other one is White Van Man, which is just atrocious. But then again, you take Black Mirror, which is British, and it's phenomenal. You know what I mean? So that's about the only things I watch. Since I spend most of my time driving, usually about 10 hours a day, an hour to Roanoke, hour back, and then 8 to 10 hours. I listen to a lot of shows. So I usually listen to Tim Pool. He's kind of very, very moderate. I get a lot of the news from him. And then I listen to Dave Smith's podcast, which he's a libertarian. I listen to Jimmy Dore, who's super progressive, try and get his perspective on things. That's about it. If anything else news related, I'll get on Twitter or something from independent media sources and journalists and stuff. And, but with the oil, here's what I think's going on with the oil. We've spent roughly the last 80 to 100 years basically being held, the entire world, at the whim of oil. I mean, we all remember Simon remembers the 70s where, you had the gasoline shortage, and we've always been back and forth. But here's what's happening now. Now that we've come along, these oil wells are starting to fill back up, and we're starting to realize that maybe oil isn't a finite resource like we once thought. Maybe the earth produces it just like water, because we had Stewart on just last week. That's what his grandpa does in Indiana. He's got an oil rig. He said for 30 years it was bone dried, and all of a sudden it came back. I think we're starting to learn, and it's going to be common knowledge here very soon that oil is a finite resource. Well, just like water, you can't make any money off of it if it's finite. So they're trying to find other ways to be able to pinch us and just keep us, just keep us going to those jobs every day, but not making it easier that we can go to the jobs and have a good life. Because you can't tell me in this day and age there's not better options than we've got for power sources. I mean, nuclear is a great option. I'm sure they've got other stuff out there, but there's no money in some of these things. That's my opinion. Maybe that's a conspiracy or whatever, but it is being shown.
The petrodollar has been the big driving force that has made the US the financial powerhouse that it currently is. But now you've got BRICS coming online. You're now seeing oil being traded in non-US dollar currency. Yeah. So this is going to put an enormous strain on the petrodollar itself. And that ultimately is going to put a big strain on our economy, the US economy, because when you lose the petrodollar, then the fiat currency, which every currency is a fiat currency pretty much. Obviously, we've got China and Russia buying gold up at ridiculous rates, but that's going to allow them to perhaps fall back on a pegged element to their currency with a commodity, which has always been sound financially. I mean, fiat currencies have all failed.
Well, even gold at the end of the day, if you really think about it as a fiat currency, think about it. If you have just gold brick in your hand and you walk up to somebody whose family hadn't eaten in a week, what's that gold going to do for them? You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, gold is still a fiat currency because it's backed up by confidence. So I have confidence that gold right there is worth a lot of money and I want to pay you a lot of money for it. But if money don't matter and the only thing that matters is surviving the next day, even gold, at that point in time, your most valuable currency is ammunition. It's clean water, ways to be able to make clean water, seeds, alcohol. For multiple reasons, mostly drinking, but you could also use it for, disinfectants and things like that. So I mean, even gold at the end of the day, I mean, you can't eat it. You can melt it down and make things out of it, I guess, but you could do that with cheaper metals as well. If, we're not back to the Stone Ages. So I don't even know about gold either. So,
well, as a commodity, it has an intrinsic value and that intrinsic value always seems to increase. So to hold a currency against gold is
the smartest thing we can do. I'm just saying worst case scenario. It
gives you stability, but it also stops you from running up multi-trillion-dollar debts because no one in this room has grasped what a trillion is. When you get some analogies out there and you realize, when you perhaps compare it to time, a trillion is an immense number. And if you were gold backs, you couldn't be running your currency debt in trillions. You just couldn't do it. So what we're here now, the fight of the fiat currency is exactly where we're at today. An out of control trillions. Grasp what a trillion is, and then that should just oh Lord, this is not going to last much longer.
Well, and I think this is where there's a little bit of a political shift in ideology. I think for most people on my side, the gold, the oil, even the gas prices aren't what backs the U.S. currency. What backs the U.S. currency is the idea that we as people are engines for creativity. America is the best place to come and turn a generation into wealth or turn a generation into ingenuity. We think about the electric cars exploding. I hear a lot of complaints that we're forcing electric cars, but we didn't, get out of the Stone Age because we ran out of stones. We got out of the Stone Age because something better came along. Batteries are getting that way. Nobody's buying corded drills anymore. The same thing is happening with a lot of the electric cars, and that's something that was an American creation. It's something that's going to be an American expansion. Whatever we decide to do next is going to be because of the people that either are in this country, come to this country, or sit around and pontificate about what could be next using the resources that this country has. And I don't think the resources are as valuable as those of us who utilize them.
Wow, that's pretty deep.
Yeah. It was. So we're going to go in.
We're ready.
All right.
We're ready. Bring it.
Bring it.
So one of the podcasts You said your kid was looking at you crazy because you was going around the house throwing out everything that was made using slave labor. Something along that lines. Am I right?
I don't remember this.
I missed that one. I don't even remember him saying that one.
What I can tell you is especially following we went and saw the movie. What's the name of that movie I forced you to come watch?
Sound of Freedom?
Sound of Freedom. So we go and watch the movie Sound of Freedom, which has a heavy description of child sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. But they go into this camp, and when they go into this camp, there's this young man that's carrying a boat of bananas. They go through a farming community where everybody. So this same slave labor camp isn't just, the children that are being sex trafficked. It's also the slavery that's included around everything. I've been pushing for a long time for an amendment to the Constitution that picks up where the 13th left off, so that instead of saying that we no longer see slavery in this country, but we will not let anyone profit from slavery. I don't think that's something I can do personally. I think I currently purchase goods that are produced through slave labor. Mm-hmm. I think that I engage in markets with people that produce slave labor. And as much as we can look at the Civil War and say, if the people in the North or the people who were anti-slavery stopped giving their money to slavers, slavery would have ended. That's true, but it's very hard not to clothe your own child, especially if you don't see the slavery happening.
Now,
so
was that y'all's review after Sound of Freedom?
At the end of Sound of Freedom, the idea that there is more than just the child slavery, that there is a whole world of slavery that's going on, and that we as Americans have a way of correcting it. And I think our Constitution is probably the strongest way. If we gave people the opportunity to sue, if we think about the child trafficking that happened on Epstein's Island, somebody flew a plane in. The pilot who flew the plane in probably had an inkling that something was going on, but didn't want to lose his job.
But why haven't we got names?
Oh, yeah, it's plausible deniability.
Why haven't we got names?
Well, here's the thing. Because there's still a lot of power on it. But there isn't the power to use the courts. And an amendment to the Constitution would allow someone who was trafficked to sue for the money that was still left on that island, or to sue that airline company for flying them in the first place. And all of a sudden,
that was a private jet.
We can sue the private jet because you can't profit from slavery. If he took money for starting slavery, for encouraging slavery, then he's liable. And so an amendment to the Constitution would open up America's legal system, and we are a litigious country.
Unfortunately,
so that is, and I think this is one of those cases that maybe fortunately, because people
definitely there are
good some benefits
for litigation. Yeah. But I think we over litigate now because blood sucking attorneys out there just that's a whole other conversation.
The answer to that would be, I would like to be the kind of person that went home and got rid of everything.
Okay,
I would love to be that person. I know I am personally not capable.
Yeah.
And I would like
to. Nobody's capable. We're just not.
But I think we are capable. I am not capable, but I think we are capable. And I think that's part of why I work with the Democratic Party and why I reach out with Black Lives Matter, why I work with the NAACP. Because if we can create a coalition of people who are saying, we don't want slavery, I don't want to earn money from slavery, I don't want to encourage other slavers. If we can get people to do that, we can change the world.
Well, and I agree with you 100% on that. And that's all about ethical investing.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you are spending your money ethically, and this goes back to actually grassroots of what started here with Stay Local Franklin County. Yeah. When you're buying local products here, it's not as though you've got the Mexican kids that are being found in these meat plants, right? And we're all buying our meat from the big box stores. And we know that there's some very unethical practices going on in the meat processing plants with kids. I mean, that's absolute slavery. Absolutely no question about it. So by supporting that local initiative is giving an alternative to someone who wants to invest ethically. And that's by buying groceries.
Yes.
And I think that's a great starting point.
So now and anybody can answer this. So that amendment to the 13th Amendment, that should allow, I'm going to say this. I dairy farmed for 7 years. Today was my first day in a new job. Oh. I'm not dairy farming anymore. I'm still farming, but not dairy farming. Dairy farmers are slaves. They are.
No doubt.
we're some of the hardest working people for the least amount of pay because our product is based off, or how much we get paid for our fluid milk is based off of cheese. You can put 100-hour week in and have the best quality milk out there, but at the end of the day, when that trade goes up or down and the price of the cheese goes up or down, it doesn't matter what the quality of your milk is. That allows the farmers to sue the government because we're put on that the stock exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And what year was it? Clinton was the one that put us back. Reagan took us off of it. Clinton put us back on it.
Back on.
It's the stock.
The New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, Dow.
Yeah, Melvin. Thad was talking about it. But that's why the price, what we get paid for milk, is based on what cheese is doing. If you took us off of that stock exchange, the farmers could say, hey, this is what it costs to produce milk. This is what we want for our milk.
So basically what you're saying is you are being forced into a corner.
Yes.
And you have no choice on how your
That's
product
exactly right.
makes money. You know what I mean?
That's
yeah.
Exactly right. No matter the quality.
Okay. So you're making, okay. I get that.
But
big,
I guess
big ag.
now, are you employed by this dairy farm? Because I don't think legally they can lower your wage because they're not getting as much.
No. What I'm saying is, so yes, I was employed. I was an employer.
Mm-hmm.
It's family, but I was employed. Mm-hmm. But what we got for say $1 a hundredweight.
Mm-hmm.
So whether we got paid 50 cents a hundredweight or $1 a hundredweight fluid ounces depended on what 1 pound of cheese was worth.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have an option to say, this is what our product, this is what it cost us, this is what it's worth. Give us.
This is what you should be selling it for.
So the answer to that would be yes. But I think sometimes we overfocus on the idea of the government. The person that you would most likely sue is whoever is pulling the profit off of that. And the government is really bad at pulling profit.
That would be the government.
We say that, but
well, no, I'd actually go.
It's kind of incompetent. I don't know.
I think the government has allowed big ag to run the monopoly when it comes to dairy because of the cooperatives in the purchasing power of who you have to sell it to.
But who is on the boards of those stocks? Who's buying up all those stocks? I think
this is exactly it. In Franklin County, it makes no sense that I can go to the grocery store and a half gallon of milk produced in Franklin County is more expensive than a gallon of milk driven from the Midwest.
Or California.
That doesn't make any sense. But it's something that regularly happens. And it regularly happens because not only are you underpaid, but whoever we put on that road to drive that truck is underpaid. Whoever we've asked to milk those cows in that area is underpaid. But somebody is earning a profit. And I think that's one of the things we're asking us all to start looking at and asking for us as individuals to be able to, or as groups, to be able to fight back against those bigger powers. And that takes getting together. It takes agreeing on something as simple as that.
Yeah.
There's no reason milk produced in Franklin County is not equally competitive to milk produced in any other state. It just doesn't make sense.
Near as far.
Well, yeah. Plus, you're not paying all the shipping costs. You're not paying all the taxes on that. I mean,
well, it's all the
plus you're putting money in the pocket of your neighbor. And guess what? Your neighbor's kids play with your kids. And now, guess what? If your neighbor's got more money from his milk, he's investing more money into his kids and your kids' baseball teams or softball teams. Now you've got better equipment. You got, just something as small as that, but it's a good example. Darnell, let me ask you this. Does that also include, because this might be a hot topic, does that also include prison labor?
Yes.
Yes.
Because I think that, here's my opinion on that. I think you're not only forcing those people in prisons to work for essentially slave labor, but those are also taking away jobs from people on the outside that really need them. And so what's your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree. We saw in this country that it was immediate. Go back and watch Gone with the Wind. So Gone with the Wind, she was a slaver at the beginning. It go through the Civil War, and as soon as the Civil War is over, she starts her business back up and immediately hires inmates. That slave population Immediately went from being enslaved to being imprisoned and pushed back to slaves. 13th Amendment says slavery shall not exist in the country except as part of a prison sentence. So we have carved out an exception, and we went immediately from a country of slavery to a country of mass incarceration.
And that's probably a big reason to why we have so many people in prisons. And y'all speak on this because, I mean, we all know the statistics. You know, you send crack into these neighborhoods in the 80s, and you're putting people in jail in these lower economic communities for crack for 30 years when just across the railroad tracks, cocaine, they're getting slaps on the wrist, and it's essentially the same thing. So now, you know, you have all these people in prison for victimless crimes, and I'm sorry, nobody should be behind bars or locked up for anything in a cage unless there is a victim. And when I mean a victim, I mean somebody was harmed either horribly mentally or physically or something like that. Other than that, if you're doing drugs, but now they have this reason to go in and put all these people in prison. And I don't really know much about the ends, but I know there's a lot of places that are still producing things.
Yes.
Right.
And one of the ways we think works is by making sure we treat rich people the same way we treat poor people. And so there's this push to get rid of bail. So the idea is if somebody can afford bail, number one, their chances of being found innocent increase by 40%. Showing up to your arraignment in a suit as opposed to showing up in an orange jumpsuit, automatically people think you're less likely to be guilty.
Yeah.
So if we get rid of that, then everybody has to show up. You see rich people having to stay in jail for 3 or 4 days until their trials. Watch how all of a sudden the speedy trial that's promised in our Constitution becomes something that's priority. If we see rich people having to or we see justice system having to hold a rich person while they produce evidence against them, all of a sudden we're not going to arrest somebody on a Friday and keep them until a Tuesday so we can get enough evidence to arrest them. We're not going to arrest them until we have enough evidence. So some of it is treating everybody the same in spite of how much money you may have is one of the ways we're looking to try and change.
Well, wouldn't just like something in the middle, simple as like bail based on economic income worth it? So if you make $40,000 a year, maybe your bail's going to be this. If you make $5 million a year, your bail would be this. You know, that way the incentive kind of meets somewhere in the middle. Because I understand it's a slippery slope. Because the no bail thing, I get it, because there's so many stupid petty crimes they lock people up for and they waste so much money. But at the same time, it's also going for people that probably shouldn't be put back on the street. So it really needs to be an individual basis, but it's so hard to do that because there's, you know, so much.
Well, I would hope not having bail would keep you from being put on the street. So if we don't offer you bail, you have to go to trial.
Oh, so
first.
you mean not even bail at all?
No,
you're talking about just, okay, never mind.
You have the right to a speedy trial. Yep. And what we've decided is a speedy trial is based on how quickly we normally do trials.
I think the January 6th folks would really appreciate that.
I think everybody would. Is don't put anybody in jail unless you are ready to try them immediately. Unless you have the evidence in hand, unless you're ready to go in front of a court, there's no need to arrest anybody.
But it also gives, you know, their defense time to prepare, their defense to go and find witness. Because every case is, I mean, 95% of the cases that go through the system are all just mumbled nonsense anyway. Really, it's the 5% out there that are big ones, your murders, the things like that where you need to sit there and take the time, you know.
Well, I think we can all agree that the criminal justice system is flawed.
Completely. It is completely jacked up.
Which is why, we listened to your last episode and you said, Brian and Darnell, we disagree on many things. We're like, we feel like we agree on most things.
That's the second question. Where do we disagree?
Well, I think we disagree. I think we disagree on the process a lot of times. I think we disagree on how to get there, but I think ultimately we all have the same goals and the same feelings. I think our discussions go about, all right, how do we just like Congress should be. You got people representing these people representing these people. We're doing what Congress should be doing. Instead of getting there and yelling and screaming at each other and put on a show, but you're representing your side of the aisle and you come in here and you discuss it. So our major disagreements are how we get there, basically.
How we get there.
How we get there.
You know the difference between us and Congress?
We have jobs.
Exactly.
Well.
Oh, touche. I mean, I agree with that across the board there. Our DOJ is weaponized. I don't care which way it's weaponized. It'll swing back another way.
And that's the thing I'm trying to explain.
It's weaponized. Whoever's in charge, right, is going to weaponize the DOJ. And that is not what the Department of Justice is about.
And let's just think right here. And this is a good segue because I want to know what y'all think about since the last year. And, I keep telling people they're cheering for everything that's going on with Donald Trump and all these indictments. My first thought is he was pulled. Let's take D.C. for example. He was pulled into D.C. court for what was it? The sedition or whatever, the January 6th stuff, all
incitement,
incitement to overthrow the government, and they gave the man bail. Now tell me this: if you really thinking that your heart of hearts that this man tried to overthrow the United States government with an insurrection that he incited, why would you not have him locked up behind bars? Why would you not have that son of a gun patted down 24 hours a day, no contact except for his attorney? You know what I mean? If he was that dangerous. So I'm telling everybody, I'm like, look, stop cheering this on and pull yourselves back for a second and stop making it so political, because hypothetically speaking, let's say Trump comes back around in 2024 and wins it, and he's going to swing that pendulum hard back in the other direction.
Yes,
and he's going to start doing the same thing to
He's
other
already
people.
said he was going to.
And that's the word, like they are turning Trump into everything they claimed he was in 2018, 2017, when he wasn't. But now they're setting it up for him to become that very, it's almost like a manifestation. So I'm curious about y'all, like in this past year, what do you think about the political climate we're in? I know that's a giant broad, but just based on the Trump stuff, while we're talking about the DOJ and how it's been weaponized.
That's a big bloody brush.
It is a big brush. I will say, as a country, we're absolutely terrible at putting rich people in jail.
100%.
So part of the reason I think he's not facing justice in some similar ways is because he's got enough either wealth, perception of wealth, or connections to wealth to prevent any real entanglements.
Yeah, but now they're trying to take away all his wealth up in New York too.
Well, how are they trying to take away his wealth?
Well, they're trying to,
other than
they're trying to shut down all of his businesses and everything, which of course we know this is all smoke and mirrors because he's probably got his businesses out in 100 different LLCs and stuff. So it's really not going to hurt him, but it's just a perception of things. It's the ideas we're putting in people's heads.
And that actually, I've got so many different issues with, because what you've done is you've tarnished the presidential office. By treating a former president this way. And I think there's some real issues there that the price to pay we won't see for a while.
I agree. And I think especially the folks on my side, we've done a really poor job because there was a lot of rhetoric in the beginning. But now he's really done two things that I can't understand how he's eligible to run for president any longer. So the first is, and I think it's the biggest of the two, is he hosted the most illegal, untrusted, corrupt election in history. He had 4 years to host an election that was fair. 6 months prior to the election, he closes the commission on voter fraud. He's caught calling Republican states to check on votes. Like, this is shady. The basis of our democracy is this option of voting. And he hosted the most corrupt election we've ever had. So I don't know how he gets over that, but the thing that he lost
back in 2000, there was a lot of hip hop about the Gore Bush thing. Of course, the internet wasn't quite it. I think if the internet had been more prominent back then, it would probably be. But the thing in Georgia, after listening to it, I think it was one of those deals. It's a little I think he was calling and saying, find them, find them, they're there, not go find them in a bad way. But that's all subjective. It depends on how you take it. Me personally, Donald Trump should be in jail and he should be tried for crimes against humanity. Nothing that they have pulled up on him at this point in time, I think. And main reason being is because you could probably go back and lock up 100 politicians off of things they're trying to get him on.
Humanity.
What he needs to be get on is his crimes. Same thing that Obama and Bush and all the illegal wars, all the people. Because mark my words, if Trump gets back in office, do not be surprised if he goes back after Barack Obama and puts him in jail for authorizing the assassination of Anwar al-Awlaki, who was an American citizen who did not get due process, because murder in this country does not have a statute of limitations. And Trump is just egotistic enough to go around and do something like that. And I agree that Obama should probably be tried for that, just like Trump should be tried for the things he's done in foreign countries. But it's not going to be a good look for our country going back on Obama and doing that. It's just going to divide us even more. But those are the kind of things that we're staring down right now because of our political climate. You know what I mean?
How has anybody forgiven Trump for hosting this election.
I haven't forgiven Trump for letting Anthony Fauci stick around as long as he did.
Which is the other one. But I feel like he would have won the election if it wasn't for COVID.
Yes, he would have dominated.
But COVID is the other thing. I don't know how we've forgiven Donald Trump for COVID. Like
he has been let off the hook on that one.
Yeah, it was awful.
That still staggers me that he hasn't retracted.
Well, it's a double-edged sword
bullshit he put out.
Because number one, he let Fauci stay on way too long, and he also, he all behind this Operation Warp Speed. And once again, this is all subjective to how you feel about all this, but most importantly, where was I going with that?
I mean, also he fired the team that usually goes out to investigate diseases before they happen. That's why we didn't have the
Listen to the
flu
last State
outbreak.
of the Union that Donald Trump did. The one where he gave the Medal of Freedom to the Tuskegee Airmen, and he recognized the talk show host, Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
He says in that State of the Union, President Xi and I have this virus under control. He knew then this thing was coming. He botched every bit of the COVID issue.
Now,
and we're trying to reelect him. Between COVID and that election, I don't know how anybody can still follow.
That's what the double-edged sword is. I'll let you just let me finish this because I forgot it and then I'll forget it again if I don't say it now. The double-edged sword part of it is he instead, and this is where I will give him credit, is instead of doing a nationwide thing, he said, I'm giving the power to the governors. I'm not going to make this a federal thing. And a lot of governors did different things. And now we see how different states survived. So also during the Summer of Love 2020, all the riots and stuff, people urged him to go send troops into those cities, and he didn't do it either. He let the states take care of it. So it's one of those things where yes and no, but if you listen to our last episode, you will hear me talk about those sort of things where I think Trump there's a good possibility that he's just another actor in the game, and he knows what's going on, and he's playing his part. And his part is to be the heel. They came to him and said, you can be the greatest, most loved president of all time, but at the same time, you're going to be the most despised and hated president of all time. But you have this, because how can you? Because like you said, he presided over all of this.
Yes. But it just feels like incompetence, not some master plan. He never got a foothold. He couldn't hire anybody that was any good. He ran through departments of everything. Everybody left. Everybody got fired. He managed the presidency. And I love The Apprentice. I watched it so much, but he managed the presidency like The Apprentice. If somebody didn't work out, he didn't work with them to make them a better manager. He fired them and brought in somebody new. So every 6 to 8 months, we're starting somebody at the top of an organization with zero knowledge from the beginning. This was incompetence.
Yeah.
No one ever got a foothold, and then something major came in the country, and we fell apart.
Well, was he not fighting the deep state from within?
But he could have not brought the deep state with him. Some of this continual firing was him putting people in place.
A lot of that was ego.
But I think what you may call the deep state, I call ego, is a lot of these terms were passing by each other that probably mean the same thing.
I mean, to say, when you blame him for hosting a dreadful election, I think a lot of the dreadful election and so much of it goes down to mail-in ballots and some of the shenanigans with what has potentially been exposed with the vulnerability of voting machines, which is now fact. So to say that he is responsible for that, I think is inaccurate.
He had control. Well, one, closing the commission on voter fraud 6 months before the election.
That's just careless.
That's just careless.
Yeah.
Beyond that, he also had the opportunity to use the Southern Voting Rights Act to help strengthen some of these issues in these other areas. And it's not like this caught him off guard. The man got elected, won the election, so he trusted Obama's election enough to stand up there and take the oath, got elected, and then said, hey, there's problems with our voter system. 4 years later, those problems were exacerbated.
Yeah,
and we're thinking about giving him another 4? Like, this is...
Well, I think he's very much into perspective. On track,
a lot of the reason people want to give him another 4 is we can probably all sit there and agree that the current administration we got is pretty much a cluster show too. I mean, the man.
That's
we're here without masks on.
Huh?
We're here without masks on, and even Donald Trump seems to trust this next election.
So with the amount I've
never trusted any elections.
Here comes Wrench. So with the information and amount of evidence that we have that we feel like Donald Trump should be tried, why not Joe Biden and Hunter?
I think
they're two different people, first of all.
Yeah.
If Hunter did something wrong, go after him.
I think the crime syndicate.
Hunter's probably
he's got several indictments, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think the crime syndicate is currently being exposed. Now,
but look at what they're trying to get Hunter on the most. What's the one thing they're trying to get him on?
It's on the
above
firearm.
all. It's on the firearm.
Which is ridiculous.
Because it's easy.
Well, but it's easy, but it's gonna put people at a wall, because I'm sitting there saying, as much as I like to see Hunter Biden in jail for probably the 100 of other creepy things he's done, this is the one thing that they're going after him for, and I'm going to stand up and say no. That man should have a right to a gun. I don't care if he's doing drugs. Unless you were a complete mental psycho, I'm an 2A absolutist, and the Constitution backs that up as well. So, and that goes beyond him. That goes beyond people who live in bad parts of town who might have a drug convention. They should still be able to own a firearm to protect themselves and their families. So
now, why don't I see you at any of the Black Lives Matter rallies?
I don't even know. Y'all got to call me and tell me.
Free Meek Mill. Come on,
man. They should have. I don't care. Drugs should not be an eliminating factor. It shouldn't be. The only eliminating factor should be like it shouldn't even be harming kids, because if you harm kids, that should be the end of it. So, no drugs, felons, no. Once you serve your time, once you've done your thing, you come back, you vote. That's what jail is for. It's to pay your debt. When you get out, your debt is free. Now you're essentially debt slaves if you come back out and you can't vote. Yeah. You can't get your firearms back. You can't do this. And you know what I mean? So
the cents on the dollar that you earned in prison can't
oh, no, it can't
sustain you once you get out.
We know putting somebody through a work program lowers recidivism by 13 to 14%. Putting somebody through an education program lowers recidivism by 60%. Our court system says 11 to 14% is the correct range to look for. So we put people through work programs knowing they are more likely to return back to jail afterwards than if we put them through school.
So do you know much about bridging the gap? With the sheriff's department in Franklin Heights?
I don't. I do like Franklin Heights, and I like the sheriffs. They're really good people.
So Overton has it's a program. It's called Bridging the Gap, and they take inmates who, I need to be careful because my mom and my sister provide a meal like every other Wednesday night for the Bridging the Gap guys. But I think it's as long as they're not in jail for assault,
it's nonviolent offenders.
Nonviolent offenders. They get to come to church. So far into the program, they get to come to church. They get to interact with the church people. Some of them they allow them. There's like a couple of trustees or really people who are in. Older, older. So there's a fella that I know. I mean, if you meet him, you'll never forget him. Yeah. Anyway, he'll take a couple of them out. They've come to my house, and they've cut and split firewood, and they've taken some. Some of them. The one particular instance, they come and cut it and split it, and I delivered it for them. And they've been to other people's houses and cut it and split it for them. To burn. But it's a program. I don't know how it starts. I don't know how it ends. I know you can get some time off of your sentence. You can get some time.
Good job, Billy.
Off of your sentence if you complete the program.
Yes.
But I don't know the details.
What I will tell you is the second reason that we're back on here in terms of creating a bridge and getting people on, this probably falls in line with, is we need more people at the NAACP meetings. People who know about those programs. Right off the bat, there's a group of people who are retired educators. There's a group of people who are retired factory workers. There's people who are community oriented, who, much like me, did everything I could to stay away from anything that had to do with jails, but may be helpful in this particular program. So I don't know anything about it because anything, with the sheriffs, I know they're all nice guys, but when I see them, I wave and I keep moving the other way. And
I'll say
some of the things that need to be changed.
And I'll say that we're both. Every organization that we are part of is inclusive.
Yes.
From the NAACP to Black Lives Matter, to the Democrats. you welcome anybody to come. Mm-hmm. You don't have to join. You can ask questions. You can, we'll converse with you. I'd like to bring up a question to Simon. We are nervous about the militia because we do not feel like they are an inclusive organization. When we think of a militia, we think of, white males who, don't include African Americans. And
I mean, following that,
Chris
Turner,
is in the militia.
The organization of the militias, and what a lot of times they will put forward for historically concerns us. So, one, we would like to show up. We need to get an invitation. We need to show up. We need to meet.
I'll give you an invitation. The weekend of the 14th.
Weekend of the 14th.
October.
No, is it?
It's the FTX.
No, there's a rally coming up.
No, the FTX is October the 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Now, how far away from the Capitol is this rally? I'm sorry.
Touche. That's a good one. But there is a rally on November 11th.
That's the something the Constitution.
A veterans rally, or
yes. Dude.
Well, we can pick up afterward on this one, but we definitely, like I said, coming in and getting rid of the idea of safe spaces for us and creating brave spaces. We'd really like to get in and see if our concerns are real or if we got them overblown in our heads. But there's definitely a concern in much of the Black community about who you are preparing combat for.
But not preparing for combat.
Yeah, that's the wrong mindset.
And again, that's part of why we need to get in here and figure that part out. If it was like a gun club, we're familiar with gun clubs, but the idea of militias, which generally muster either based on some civil action or a community concern, really feels like the opportunity for vigilante justice.
Let me correct you there. Mm-hmm. Let me correct you there.
I want one question. So, are you good with the National Guard?
Yes.
All right. Did you know that the National Guard was originally intended to be the organized militia of the states?
I don't have a problem with organized militia based on folks that I vote for. Sometimes I lose, sometimes I win, but I know the pecking order of the mustering for the organized militia. But I don't know
which is the National Guard,
right? So I know how the National Guard gets activated. I don't know how Franklin County
has the National Guardsmen BS reasons. I can tell you.
It is, but a lot of us voters vote for BS stuff.
We did. I'd vote for George Bush twice, and if I could go back and take that vote away, I would do it faster than you can say.
There are only two ways that the Franklin County Constitutional Militia, I think there's only two. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. I think there's only two that can muster the militia. The sheriff is one. In fact, there is three. The governor of the state can muster.
Right. The president.
I don't think the president can muster.
Well, in the state of Virginia, only the governor should be able to muster an unorganized religion.
The sheriff can.
The sheriff holds ultimate power.
The sheriff should not. I guess that part then concerns me.
If the FBI is coming in here and doing an investigation and they have not notified the sheriff can kick them out.
The sheriff holds the highest law capacity in the county. It's a very, very powerful position. And those are the only two. But
most people don't understand how powerful the sheriff's position is.
Yeah.
That's why the position is very important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, with regards to that, I've covered that there. Mm-hmm. They're not mustered. They're not marching up and down streets with AKs slung across their back and all that good stuff. That's the nonsense.
Militia. If you see somebody that's patched as a militiaman in any way, shape, or form as a Franklin County militiaman, then you should call and report to the sheriff. Because that is not...
Because Franklin County would never be both patched and armed at the same time.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Not in public. They can train.
Yeah, if you guys are hanging out.
They can train.
Gun clubbing.
However,
I'm all for it.
Well, essentially that is part of it.
Yeah.
Let's not skirt around that. Being proficient with firearms is one of the training models that we adhere to being recognised as a regulated, organised militia. So it's a constitutional militia, not with these fly-by-night militias. It's not, a bunch of goose-stepping, skinhead guys in the backwoods with white bloody hoods and all that stuff. I mean, so the word militia has very much been polluted by bad actions of citizens, but also by the press. But I will say this, I think at the end of the month, I think we're going to host a Franklin County militia podcast. And I think there's going to be a lot of questions that we're going to be putting to the guys that will answer all your questions. I'm not here to represent the militia in any way, shape, or form.
But they can guys having questions. I think it would be good, for y'all to set in, because y'all can ask some of those questions.
Yes.
Or at least have questions to us as moderators that we can put to them.
Okay.
And I don't think it's not as divisive as you're making out. There are black folks in the Franklin County militia.
And here's where I'm
just saying.
As somebody on the outside, because I'm not part of the militia, I haven't joined it. I've told them multiple times, look, and I'll tell you too the same thing. If it hits a fan, y'all know where to find me. I've got experience. I know how to maneuver in combat situations. With that being said, I think it's probably more of a cultural thing. It's just like, and God, forgive me for the stereotype, but if there was a rap club in town and I was like, man, there ain't enough white dudes up there rapping, you know what I mean? That would be kind of the thing. Well, the thing is, they're not saying I can't go up there. Mm-hmm. It's just not something that's a culturally relevant thing. I think what we need to do is make it more culturally relevant to everybody that you all support, and y'all get a militia going too. I mean, if that's what you want to do with your organizations,
it should.
I mean, and combine forces. Look, people get mad. I know we've had the BLM rallies, like especially in 2020 before COVID, out in Virginia Beach and stuff like that. Look, other than the trigger discipline they were showing, people were like, oh, conservatives get. No, I'm not mad at this. Those people have a right to carry their guns too. I don't care if they're Black Panthers. I don't care. They can carry their weapons. And they can support the Second Amendment. I encourage that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So yeah, I mean, I think that's more. It's more of a culture thing. It's not just inclusive to a certain group. I just think it's just not something on a lot of people's radar. But we can change that. Like we can get I want any citizen to this county. I don't care what religion, race you are. Join the militia. We need as many people as we can.
But I want to say absolutely not have two militias.
Well, I was just using that as hypothetically speaking. I was just saying we encourage it. Like we encourage. I'll join up as one would be better, but the point of it is saying, look, make it culturally relevant to everybody.
That's right.
And I think
the problem if you do that, you wind up with two different sets of training, and miscommunication. I mean, if you were to have to deploy for any reason. We're all going for the same reason, but a simple miscommunication of a hand signal, that's like blue on blue. That's not what we want. But as a militia, it's not about getting together and training and knowing your firearm. It's about that, but it's also about learning how to navigate through unknown terrains, implementing TCCC,
probably medical training as well.
That's important.
That's huge. Tourniquet's a difference between losing an arm and
I don't think any of those bother us.
No.
As a gun club, I think just the word militia, and we have tried. I guess
that's the stigma of the word, though, and I think the misconception of that stigma when you're talking about the Franklin County Constitutional Militia is a completely different thing, because it's a constitutional militia, and every resident actually is constitutionally obligated to volunteer as a militia member and train once a month accordingly. That was the constitutional.
That was 18 to 55.
That was the National Guard standards until they started receiving funds from the federal government.
Well, then they got the 1903 Dick Act and then the National Guard, which was the state militia, was then now funded by by the federal government, which really is in conflict with what the Second Amendment and the formation of the militia was about. So to have state funding and then go to federal funding really is in conflict, really, with the truest interpretation of the Second Amendment. Well, if you read the whole Second Amendment.
I understand there's concerns. I have never gotten that feeling of you shouldn't be here.
Well, I think that's because you're a part of it. With us, asking questions and kind of like, yeah, we're having a meeting, but we don't get an exact date. Which I will even say, we'll go as far to say, we've attended Tea Party meetings.
Yeah.
No threat with them. They allow us to join. We've attended the Patriot Network meetings. Lovely people. We disagree on some things, a lot of things we agree on.
But we go into those spaces. It's a big part of, I think, what the basis of our podcast was.
The Franklin County militia is apolitical.
Mm-hmm.
And here maybe, I'm not going to say it is the case, but they don't view activism as being a core element of being a militia member.
Which is a rule in the United States military too. You cannot be politically active in uniform in the United States military. Mm-hmm. So you can
so that may
have
be,
your opinion, but you can't show up
as you're professing to be BLM activists. There may be an element of that's not what our founding documents and our code of conduct welcome, because we are apolitical.
So none of your members are active members of the Republican Party.
Not at
all. No, you can just come from the military part.
I mean, we're not going to show up as Black Lives Matter.
You can still do it.
I think what I'm saying is you as a militia member, you should not.
No, you don't represent the Republican Party while you're there. You might be a member of it, but that's not. Same thing with the Army. You're showing up to be a soldier. You're not showing up to be a Bush fan when I was in, or a Clinton fan, or whatever the case may be. And I think a good example that might be able to make everybody understand the difference here is the same with you all. And we had this discussion on the last podcast. It's BLM. Like, there's a perception of BLM in this country that they are violent, that they are full of people that want to riot and things like that. Mm-hmm. And there's but you all come in here and you say, well, no, this is us and this is how we do things. So I think it's about
and
how
you
we
said yourself, you think a lot of it is outside agitators.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Sure. I agree 100%.
And we don't know about, the actual protesting in Minnesota, but what we can speak for is what happens here in Franklin County.
That's the questions I've got on Twitter.
It is all peaceful
for y'all. So
it is all peaceful.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll say this,
and inclusive. You all are more than welcome to join.
I get that. But let me say one thing about if there was a BLM rally here, or there was an Antifa rally here, God forbid, I can guarantee you that Franklin County militia will not turn out to oppose or get involved in any BLM or Antifa activity or any political, what's the word I'm looking for?
Protest?
Any political protest. Mm-hmm. That is not that's not our code of conduct. Mm-hmm. So these things, we would not, the police, the sheriff is there for that duty.
I was going to say.
Now, does that mean that you all will not show up with your patch?
Nope. We will not show up with our patch.
But you could have members show up. Because we have talked to members of the Franklin County militia.
Well, yes, when you're not in uniform.
At a protest.
You're free. When you're not in uniform and
with their weapons in their bags.
Those aren't Franklin County militia.
They were. I've seen those two members. They are Franklin
if they have weapons
militia.
in their bag, that's still fine. You can.
Which I don't have a problem with. We actually spoke to them for
quite a bit of time talking to them.
I think I know one of them that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. We won't say names.
Now.
But they weren't patched up or in any uniform.
No.
But
that's their right to carry a firearm.
How does the militia support the Second Amendment and get mustered by the sheriff's office? Have you talked to the number of guns that are confiscated by the sheriff's office? They have to be the number one confiscator of weapons. So if they muster you, that will probably be one of the duties that the militia would have to enact. And that seems like a scary combination to me.
I don't think the sheriff is ever going to do anything counter to the Constitution.
Well, not this sheriff.
Check to see if our sheriff's office ask our officers if they have confiscated weapons.
I'm sure they have during their whilst processing someone. I mean, felons aren't allowed firearms.
But
guess
is
what's
that
going to happen?
Contrary to the idea of the militia?
In what respect?
Is the militia okay partnering with a group that specifically removes weapons from American citizens?
I think there's a legal framework in which citizens' firearms are confiscated.
That would be a good question for Brian.
But,
yeah, that is a really good question.
They're going to show up at the end of the month. So bombard us with questions.
Okay.
And we'll let them have it.
Well, I'm the same way. I served in the military, and now I see, in New Orleans during Katrina, there were United States military personnel walking around, and they were taking guns away from citizens in New Orleans, and who was left in New Orleans? It surely wasn't the rich people. You know what I mean? They were going through and they were disarming people in low economic neighborhoods when they were sitting around fighting for all they had left. So yeah, it's definitely a conundrum, and it comes down to the point where at the end of the day, I think it's better to be held accountable by your local sheriff than be held accountable by a president hundreds of miles away that you have no say-so over. So if the sheriff around here that does muster you, and I'm not saying that we're being hypothetical because it might not be over to the next year, but the sheriff that does do it, we know where he lives. He's here to answer to the people one way, shape, or form. So I think that's a discussion that can be had more so if it hits, because this is all super hypothetical right now, because I understand what y'all were saying, that if you're legally obligated by the sheriff's department, and cops bust constitutional rights more than any other entity on the planet have, going back for decades, if they can muster you up, that's a conundrum. I personally think that if something like that was brought up to the people I've met from the local militia, they would stand down in a heartbeat. But I can't speak for them, and you never know with this. But because here's the thing about it, and everybody, and this is going to lead to a greater point, and everybody thinks that, as you were speaking to earlier, about this big grand scheme when you attribute it to incompetence. So let's take Turkey out there. There was a revolution in Turkey 10 years or so ago, and all they told the soldiers to do was just go out there and stand on this bridge. Soldiers had no idea what they were doing there. They were just going to go stay out there. Then all of a sudden, the media comes out and says, well, these soldiers, they're trying to overthrow the government or whatever. So what happens? Now everybody goes down to the bridge and starts attacking these guys. They have no earthly idea what's going on. So, I mean, a big part of the problem is there are so many moving parts going that
you can't, raising hypotheticals really doesn't solve.
That's how this country got started, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Don't blame the Brits.
There were a couple British soldiers.
Don't blame the Brits, man.
and a riot
over tea
came up around them, and it was maybe 2 or 3 British soldiers, and the entire city kind of comes in at them. They end up firing off a weapon, running and hiding, and the next day,
changing their red tunics, I think,
gets out there and puts together that Boston massacre when these guys were acquitted on U.S. soil. Afterwards. But so yeah, this idea is, but it's human more so than anything else. I mean,
I think it comes down to an individual. What are you willing to do? But a lot of the times, as somebody in a chain of command, as a soldier, you're told to do something and you're not explained as to why you're doing it. Yes. Next thing you know, you're caught up in something like, wait a minute, I have no earth. Now, that's different. But if you're told to go confiscate weapons, I think that's cut and dry right there. And you make a decision right then and there, and you say F this or don't, but understand the consequences if you do.
While we're on 2A topics, weapons of war.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever fired a muzzleloader?
No.
A bolt action rifle?
I fired M16.
All right. What about a bolt action?
That's it. I mean, is it bolt action?
Yeah.
I've come to find out.
No, M16's
I am a pacifist.
M16's semi-automatic.
Right. And that was a terrible shot. So part of the reason the Army didn't take me.
So a bolt action, you have to raise a bolt, slide it back,
and push
it forward, and pull it back down.
I've spun the rifles. I'm a member of a fraternity, but
it by the way, they claim it was
just stop talking.
2 shots with a bolt action in like 4 seconds. So if you want to believe that,
I'm clearly a liberal here.
He's spun dummy rifles.
For the drill.
So I have not. No, I'm.
But y'all have friends who own.
Yeah. Well, I'm not anti-gun. I just don't.
Yeah.
Carry one myself.
I think weapons of war. We need to stop running from that. We need to start embracing it.
Embracing weapons of war.
The term weapons of war.
Well, I think I can explain this from my side because I think most people are like me. When you were like bolt action, and most liberals are like, "Hey, you got to do something about guns," and then conservatives like, "Well, what do you want us to do?" And then we reach into our bag of ignorant statements and we ball together some ignorant statement and hand it to you and go, "Well, banish assault rifles." We don't know.
Yeah.
The truth is, if we want schools to be safer, if we want guns to be safer, gun people have to make the laws. Gun people have to organize. All I want is the same way you have to get a driver's license and insurance for a car, do that with a gun. But you know who's got to come up with the test?
You shouldn't have to do
that. You know who
either,
has to come up with the test? It's got to be gun people. And again, all of you, you're right. And it may be where you say, well, we're not going to do that. But the only people that can solve the gun issues in this country are the gun people. Those of you who are safe firearm carriers, you've got to stop looking at liberals and going, well, what's your... Because I'm just going to ball together some stupid answer.
Yeah.
And hand it to you. I don't have an answer because I don't gun.
That's a brilliant answer.
I rely on Jesus. That's it.
And this comes from
I'm going to get shot. That's what it was meant to be.
Yep.
So the reason I say we need to stop running from it is because the muzzleloader and the bolt action rifle, which would have been World War One.
World War One and World War Two. The Enfield Mark IV 303 rifle was
you're speaking,
World War II.
Yeah, you're speaking German to me. I surely can see that.
So every firearm that's ever been made has been a weapon of war.
Mm-hmm.
It has served in a weapon of war. And you see, we've seen as the military upgrades theirs, so does the civilians. But actually, the military owns it first, and when the military upgrades to their next generation of rifles, that first or the previous generation becomes a civilian use.
Mm-hmm.
So the 223, it's a round. That was the Army's round first, and then the Army come out with a better 223 round and called it the 5.56. Well, then it hit the civilian market as the 223.
How do you keep that out of kids' hands?
That goes.
That's a parenting issue.
That's
a parenting issue.
Then I'm sure plenty of those gun owners are parents. Get those parent gun owners together and figure it out. But again, anytime you try and lay this on liberals,
well, I'm not going to lay it on
get something
liberals,
terrible.
I am going to lay it on criminals. You can have parents who teach their kids. I mean, you're a parent, right?
Oh yeah, both of us are.
The cookie jar always looks better. So where I'm going with that is, as a parent of a 2.5-year-old, and I can teach her not to pick that weapon up. And as she grows older, I can train her on how to properly handle that weapon. As she makes decisions with her friends and whatnot.
So disrespectful, Chris.
I'm sorry.
I'm kidding,
I probably should take
Dude, we're
that.
the most.
I really should probably take
unorganized.
that.
Just text them. Tell them you're having a deep conversation right now.
Lethal Weapon. Y'all have seen the movie.
Danny Glover getting too old for this.
His son.
Yes.
He was good friends with a kid that everybody seemed was in good with all the good kids, and he wound up with a gun in his hand. Well, he wound up with a gun in his hand because of a criminal and the decisions he made. So yes, it starts with the parents, but I think we also have to be.
We're asking for you to be proactive. That's what us bleeding heart, no gun understanding liberals are asking. We can't do it.
Yeah.
We cannot do it. We're going to sound stupid.
What we need to do is get y'all two out to the range next time we have our buddies plug for Safe Side Tactical, phenomenal downtown gun range, Shenandoah Avenue in downtown Roanoke. So it's easily accessible from all the surrounding rural counties. And also, and I've said this on the show many a times, downtown Roanoke is a terribly dangerous place here lately. If you live in those neighborhoods, go to the range. If you're an older grandma, if you're an older gentleman, whatever the case may be, go to the range. They will teach you. They will talk to you. They will show you. They're phenomenal people. Safe Side Tactical. They come out to our event with Spike Coe, and hopefully we're going to have him on the show here soon. Y'all come next time we have them for a big event like with Spike. Y'all come up to Simon's or to my cabin, wherever we do it at, bring out the automatic weapons and shoot them all, and then ask the guy some questions or whatever. Because even me, look, I was a weapons specialist in Iraq. I carried the M16, the M249 SAW squad automatic weapon, which is a machine gun. I also manned the 50 McCall machine gun that was mounted on a truck, and the Mark 19 grenade launcher machine gun. So you want to talk about grenades, pull the pin and throw it. This was doot with grenades. So I had all those weapons, and I couldn't tell you right now. If you ask me to sit there, and I'm just not a weapons guy. All I know is I have one, and I'm prepared to do what I got to do to defend my family. That's it. That's a month of training, but I should know more. I really should. And y'all come out with us next time and ask these, because I'm interested in some of this stuff. Like, I'm ignorant to it, and I should be better at it, because I think educating everybody is the best way to go, to understand that it's just like everything else. Gun is a responsibility. You know what I mean? It's a responsibility for everybody, because it's protecting your family, it's protecting your neighborhood, it's protecting yourself, but it's also used as a tool, for hunting, for sport, if you want to go have some fun, if you want to do skeet shooting. So, I mean, just the demonization.
Yeah. I mean, but it does come with a heavy responsibility.
Fellas, I got to go. I got a message. I got to go home.
Okay.
Mate.
Sorry. I had some more questions and stuff, but
I'm gonna throw one out before you go. I was gonna derail it a little bit.
Hit me.
I had to ask, President Obama being gay. All right, so you hit this on the last one.
I keep getting the memes about this.
Here's my question.
I just gotta laugh.
Why wouldn't he come out?
Yeah.
Why not? I don't know.
Why wouldn't he?
Well, for the same reason that he didn't support gay marriage when he
did, and then we all loved him.
Yeah, but then he did when it became politically relevant for him to do it. Trump was actually the first president to run in history on gay marriage. Yeah, he really was. He was the first one to say he supports
former gay president.
Could be because think
and
about how
transvestite first lady.
Oh my goodness! Think about how well Dreams of My Father sold. Sweet Dreams of My Father can sell even more. Why wouldn't he come out?
Brother man, for me personally, we got a lot more issues than worrying about whether our president was gay or his wife was a transvestite. I mean, me personally, that's how I feel.
Yeah, I don't know why you waited for him. You should have asked for him. You should have waited till he left, because this had to deal with the conspiracy theories from the previous episode.
Fellas,
I thought I was going to draw you back in.
But anytime, man.
Conspiracy theory. Look. If I didn't have a September 3-week-old baby at home, I would sit up here all night. But that message I got, I need to go home.
Because it's going to be 4 weeks next week, and then 5 weeks, and then a year.
Man, I'm telling you. Yeah. That 2.5-year-old.
When they're 8, you won't remember it.
Oh, my gosh.
Where did the time go? It
goes.
Simon,
good to see you, bro.
Good to see you.
Chris,
Brian, Darnell.
Thank you.
Sam, Billy.
Actually, it's not Sam. I completely screwed up. It's Chester. Or I just call him Bennett. It's Bennett. Never mind. Whole different story. But you go ahead and jump on his mic since he's gone then. But Chris.
Right quick. Who was that real famous singer in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s that done the mullet?
Billy Ray Cyrus.
Billy Ray Cyrus.
Joe Gibney, Billy Ray. Come on now. Country music, Alan Jackson, there's hundreds of them.
You Billy Ray Cyrus.
There was no mullet bigger
Cyrus.
than Billy Ray, though.
It's my achy, breaky heart.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so awful much.
Hey, let me know when y'all want to do it again.
All right.
I think we need to get them back more often than once a year. I think
I would agree.
As crazy as our political climate is, this is at least a quarterly thing, just like quarterly, or at least bi-yearly, like with Stewart. We need to get y'all boys, but appreciate it.
Thank
Chris.
y'all. Thank y'all.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Yeah. I have something I'd like to change direction slightly.
All right.
With a local issue that's come to my attention.
Oh, all right.
And the local issue is
jump on the mic, Bennett. Now we need your input here.
The borders. What happened several months ago was sheriff's officers were at all the schools.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
They had a presence there at all elementary schools, middle school, high school,
right?
Even the Christian Heritage. We welcomed it. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really positive move in community policing, and I congratulate them for it. But now the Board of Supervisors has refused that presence at Christian Heritage.
In an effort to save money?
Most likely.
One can only assume that, because it wasn't even allowed to be discussed at the Board of Supervisors meeting, but we've subsequently found out that the Franklin County attorney was the guy behind really crushing whatever legal standpoint he was looking to make in not supporting this initiative. Mm-hmm. And as a result, the sheriff's officers are still at all the elementary schools, still at the middle school, still at the high school, but not
public schools.
At the public schools, but not at Christian Heritage. Now, what I find highly offensive about that, and I'm going to make myself known at a Board of Supervisors meeting pretty soon, is our taxpayer money should be receiving, it's irrelevant. These are kids. I don't care whether it's a private school or not. The taxpayers are the guys that are footing that bill. And what they're making, to me, it's so offensive that they're selecting kids to be taken out of that protective program from a private school only. That really pisses me off. Mm-hmm. And what annoys me even more is that at every Board of Supervisors meeting, where they have them in, the Buckingham Palace, I call it the government buildings. We know this I have a good laugh about it every time I go there. It's that during pretty much every Board of Supervisors meeting, guess how many sheriff's deputies are there? Mm-hmm. So whilst the Board of Supervisors decide that they can protect themselves from any public meeting shenanigans, and I get that they can get heated, but most of the Board of Supervisors meetings that we've all been to have actually been very composed and respectful, and no one's lost their shit there, right? So no one's gone off ranting and raving. But there are 3 police officers, sheriff's deputies there, and they've decided to withdraw the one sheriff's deputy from Christian Heritage, even though that tax funding from the parents of the children, they're still taxpayers. They're still entitled to the same degree of security as children in exactly identical circumstances. They're a school. There's loads of kids there. There's loads of teachers there. It's an unarmed. There's no weapons allowed on the premises, as are not allowed in any public school. So the circumstances are identical, yet the Board of Supervisors and that damn attorney has decided that, no, they're not going to have that level of protection at Christian Heritage. I'd like to know your opinion on it.
I really
does not sound reasonable.
It does sound very unreasonable. Yeah. I think it's unreasonable.
The only thing I can think of is that it has something to do with funding. And if it has to do with funding, us liberals, let's tax it and pay for it. Tax and spend.
It's separating the kids. It's saying, well, this kid or this kid. And I think we should all, as a community,
I'm disgusted
kids,
by it.
It doesn't matter whether they're being homeschooled, whether they're going to private school or public school, should all be protected. These are the kids in our community. These are the kids that are going to be the future for us. So, no matter what, I'm all about protecting them. So I think they're going to a private school, and I know a lot of the arguments be, they're going to private school, they can afford their own security. But that's not necessarily the case. A lot of people are sending their kids to private school, and they are still getting by paycheck to paycheck just because they want their kids to have a different ed. But those parents are also still paying taxes towards a public school as well. So
the insurance policy for using a private firm to provide armed security at the school is astronomical, significantly different than when you use a police officer or sheriff's deputy, because they're under a completely separate code and don't require that level of liability indemnification. So then to say, because it's a private school, the parents can fork out and pay for this, it would be astronomical to put an armed member of security with the liability of insurance that would be required to do that.
I can't imagine.
Yeah,
the only thing I can think of in our county is that they are such a hard line for not going over budget, and in the midst of not going over budget, not adding any additional taxes. It feels like that's the only reason we hire our Board of Supervisors. Balance the budget, don't spend any extra money. And I think in this instance, it feels like the easiest place to cut a salary without having to explain that you're cutting a salary.
Whilst they've banged in how many millions into Summit whatever it is, business park, that's a catastrophic failure. Then you've got, this 64 acres in town.
That is very much.
But you're talking about millions and millions of dollars.
It is.
The
one in town I trust a little bit more.
They are speculating on.
Well, that's all we can do. We can guess what's going to happen. But if we invest in ourselves, I'm happier about it. I didn't like the Summit View because we've got this idea of we'll build it and they'll come, like we'll build this space and then factories will come in. We don't need factories anymore. We've got business owners here who could use spaces. If they're going to take that area, the Rocky Mount Ready Mix area, and they're going to turn it into spaces for food trucks, the number of people I know who are running food trucks every day, hustling hard, I would love to see a place where they could pay a reasonable rent and put up their food truck and we could go and do it. If we're investing in us, I'm for it. Spend that tax money, even if it fails.
I'm all about it.
But we're hoping somebody's going to come out from out of town and save us. I'm done with that.
But my bet on that piece of land?
What's that?
I think they're going to put up a Dunkin' Donuts there just to piss off the Starbucks guys.
Well, we kind of talked about this last night. We one of our favorites is Ella's Eats, Cheryl, and she is a mainstay, or was, up at Chaos Mountain Brewing, which we had the final hoorah, which is a wake essentially last night up at Chaos. It was her last deal, and she was such a mainstay up there. But we're hoping that
this is only at the discussion stage, so we can't let it go yet.
But we can plug Ella's because we just ate.
We'll talk about it afterwards because we're really hoping, that's just a shining example of the people in this town that if we work together, we can find ways to put them in positions of success. Mm-hmm. But we've got to, talk to each other and use our connections and things of that nature. I think
that wheel is in motion.
It is. And hopefully it turns out right because we've got such a good opportunity. I wanted to ask you boys this while I'm thinking about it, because I don't know if you paid attention to it the last time, but we had the last show a year ago. I split it up into 2 different episodes, and I named them 2 different episodes.
Yes.
Part 1, I said discussion with Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Part 2, I named a discussion with the Black community. And if you want to go back to a year ago to our Facebook posts, look at the one that I named a discussion with Black Lives Matter. There were 200 to 300 comments. Mm-hmm. And all the way down through there, either they were accusing Sam and I of one or 2 things. Either we were far-right extremist Nazis, or we were BLM supporting
sympathizing.
Yeah. You were Antifa.
And nothing in between.
Yeah. Imagine being an actual member.
And I'm like, did any of y'all actually listen to the show? Did anybody calling us any? And they didn't. So the second one, I'm going to do a little social experiment. I just tweaked the title just a bit. I said part 2, not one comment. Not one. Go back, not one comment. Nothing. That shows you the political climate we're in right now, all based off of language.
Yes.
Just
demonization,
manipulative language.
Sound bites.
And like I went back earlier about BLM and militia, there's this, and I made a post on X, saying, hey, we're sitting back down with Brian and Darnell. What kind of questions you want to ask? And I know we talked about it the last time, but I'll bring it up real quick so y'all can explain it for everybody tuning in for the first time is, they're wanting to know about, what's going on in Minneapolis and what's going on here and what's going on there and why do y'all support this and the George Floyd stuff. And I know y'all talked about that the last time and you explained it, but just for the new people, With
George Floyd,
it was a reflection.
Yeah, it's a reflection of me as a black male. I feel like that instance could have happened to anybody.
Absolutely. It's happened to plenty of people.
And I don't like the fact that they downplay the fact that he was a victim because of his past, his flawed past. I feel like, if something happens to me and I'm gunned down in the street, they're going to say, hey, here's a picture of Brian with a do-rag smoking a blunt. He was a weed head in high school. That's not who I am now. If you know me now, you know that I rarely drink. I've had 1 beer. I don't smoke weed. I'm a family man. I spend most of my time attending soccer games and doing stuff with my family.
You haven't got time to do that other stuff.
And wearing your hats that suspiciously look like MAGA hats.
I did. I put this on purpose.
When I saw it, I had to think about it there for a second. I was like, wait a minute.
Now, do you guys identify with a lot of the national or just other local BLM?
We don't.
I don't think there is a national.
Yeah.
So
BLM.
So why call yourselves such?
Is it
back to what Riddle was saying, where identification. It gets the attention. It brings the conversation.
I think it definitely does.
Yes, it's a movement. I think people have turned it into an organized thing that is located in these urban areas, but it's not. We saw the protests that were happening in France in the name of Black Lives Matter.
And I think some terminology matters. The thing I loved about Occupy Wall Street is that occupation is the absolute bare minimum. These folks weren't coming in and saying we're going to change anything. We're going to be here and we're going to see what happens. And I think a lot of people who spent time occupying saw a different side of what happens on the street level of everything. Black Lives Matter as a bare minimum is evidence. There are some people who cannot agree with the words that Black Lives Matter. That statement is too much.
Right.
And I think that helps create a big lineage, because if somebody can't even say Black Lives Matter, it's hard for me to believe we're going to be able to move somewhere together. Yeah. I don't think the national organization is of any value to anybody. I don't know who's donating to it. My suggestion would be to stop. There are plenty of local organizations that you can donate to, but that doesn't mean that the national organization or a larger organization gets to take the name.
Look, that goes for the same for the NRA. Don't send your money to the NRA. Don't send your money to Wounded Warrior Project. Like these companies, that's the same reason I said last time I don't support BLM, because it's going to money somewhere you don't know. Find somebody local. The NRA, Gun Owners of America would be a better option than NRA, but I'm just not a supporter because they've proven time and time again they're not doing anything for the local people.
And also I have to throw this plug. Bridget Craighead, who's pretty much been the face of Franklin County Black Lives Matter. For her to keep it relevant in this area is a big deal. And the fact that she's still working for this community, if somebody, you tell them talk about it and be about it, that's her. She is currently volunteering. She's heading an organization,
Rising Stars, to help kids get into cosmetology. Not just black kids, any kids.
Any kids. Yeah. So, she can use help with that. And that's in Franklin County. She is doing a lot of this on her own, same work, with her own funding.
Well, I've talked many times on this show before. That whole thing was the reason I decided to do this show, because I have my disagreements with her, and I'm glad y'all brought it up. But she is doing good things in that area. Like my beef with her, we've had our issues before, and it was only one time. And this is the thing that gets me the most about it, is I've never had one interaction with her, with the exception of one post I made about the land purchase down here in Rocky Mount, and Joe Stanley came on here and. By the way, I buried the hatchet with Joe this weekend. So Joe, this is nothing against you. I shook his hand and said, let's just not let come to me next time.
Rephrase burying the hatchet?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to hold a grudge in Franklin County.
Well, it is, because you're going to run into each other. Stand next to each other in Walmart.
Well, he accused us of using racially tinged language on our show because somebody in our show was alluding to the bad apples of Tank Hill. The person who was alluding to the bad apples of Tank Hill was Chris, who was biracial, and the reason Chris wanted to be here today, he asked us specifically because Chris has a very unique dichotomy. Chris is not only like his father was black and his mother was German Baptist, so you cannot get much more of a different range of things. So he has two phenomenally great perspectives. And he had mentioned those comments about, and as he alluded to earlier, about cutting wood, and he was taking wood to people up on Tank Hill, and he said, well, there's some bad apples in Tank Hill. Well, I could say the same thing about Doe Run. There's plenty of bad apples in Doe Run. It doesn't make me racially tinged language, you know what I mean? But that's what we're accused of. And
I was with Chris when we delivered that one.
Yes, absolutely. And Bridget made some comments right there backing up Joe, and I was sitting there thinking, out of all the guests we've had on this show before, we've had a lot of black guests on here that we've promoted and we've shouted out. We've had John Clements multiple times, Brian Maxwell, Terrell, all these people, and this is the first time you've come and said anything, and it's all negative. So, I'm hoping maybe somewhere down the line her and I can bury the hatchet and we can get by, this whole nonsense, because a lot of people seem to believe in her, and we got to find a way to move forward. But that's my biggest beef.
You could stop by and talk to her anytime. Yes. She's
but I wish that's what she would have did with me, is come and talk to me instead of blasting a hole that nest on. And same thing with Joe. Joe, come and talk to me.
Well, we know people
and I forgive both of them, and we can have our
behind a computer.
That's part of it. That's a big part of it. But I wasn't targeting any of them. I wasn't. I did not specifically target either one of them. This was a personal post on the town, and then they both came in and and then said their thing, and I took offense to them. Like, You represent the black community. You've never once come and say, attaboy for having this person on this person. The first thing is you're coming and defending a white liberal and not, you know what I mean? It perplexed me, but that's neither here nor I'm hoping she's doing good with the local community. I'm glad she's doing the cosmetology thing. I hope she's fighting to end the licensing for cosmetology and stuff, because why do you need a license to do that kind of stuff and braid hair and pay the government extra money to do it is beyond me.
Well, she doesn't have her license.
Why? Well, she shouldn't have to. She should be able to do it because it's gonna, her merits are going to stand on its own. She shouldn't have to pay the government to be able to do her service, should she?
I think that those folks need to get together and do it, because you drive a truck. You have a license.
Yes.
Should I be allowed to get in a truck and drive it?
If you can drive it.
I won't. That's the problem. It's part of your training and your capability.
Tons of people. Now, maybe a CDL is different. Maybe you do need extra training, but to get behind a car, minimal training. Do you need a license? Yes, but you have to pay for it. No.
What she does, she is skilled at, and she needs to be recognized both in her skill through licensure and through accepting other and teaching other people to have that same licensure. But those people need to get together. You're absolutely right, especially in black hair care. What is required for black hair care is based on what was required for white hair care, and it's not the same, and it's causing a pay gap, and it's causing a discrepancy. You are 100% right. It's just difficult to solve. And she's going to have to be part of the group that solves it.
I just don't understand why you need a license. Tell me this. You got beautiful hair like me, long, luscious, beautiful. If somebody comes and screws your hair points, you ain't going back to them. And and you might be the victim of it, but your Yelp review or your word of mouth, that person ain't going to stay in business long. Just like somebody who sells meat. If you sell rancid meat, you ain't going to sell it too awful long.
If a truck driver crashes,
you ain't going to be driving long. You know what I mean? Like, so the whole need to buy licenses and pay the government extra money to be able to do, like, I want that extra money to go into her pocket to feed her kids, not go to pay some government somewhere.
I mean, I get you, but we poisoned the water in Lake Michigan. All those car companies still running with no problem. We poisoned the water in what was Flint? It? No, the little town with the train. Here's the crazy thing: it wasn't just the train. That water was being poisoned before the trains got there. The companies that are doing it are still in existence. We had Exxon pouring all that oil into the ocean that we watched live. Still in existence.
We're sorry.
Right.
We messed up.
But part of it is
that's exactly
we as customers, like I was like, I can't believe Exxon. Let me go fill my car up. It's not like I was going to go out and punish the company. So in a lot of instances, it's very hard for us to put in check very, very big companies. And so sometimes the licensures catch the little guy, and figuring out how to fix that is something that we absolutely need to do.
They're bleeding the little guy dry.
They bleed the little guy dry. And Franklin County, in the next 10 years, if we're going to be successful, we're going to be a lot of little guys, a lot. And we just got to figure out how to support each other in that particular aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I know that when I take my daughter to Bridget's shop, they've taught her enough that my daughter won't leave with an infection or or have plugs of hair missing. Rather than taking her to some mom and pop or somebody
in their kitchen.
And to me, my child's safety is worth that extra, $100 I have to pay.
So it's something we had to figure out. There are still issues with it. But I tell you what, that jump towards racism, and I think especially for black women, because I brought up jokingly about Barack Obama being gay and Michelle Obama being transgender, but there has been a heavy push in this country to masculinize black women. And we think back to Sojourner Truth when she was getting up and speaking on women's suffrage, and they asked her not to speak because they didn't want to confuse the black issues with the women issues, and she gave that famous speech, "Ain't I a Woman?" where she describes not having the same features that America describes as feminine. She could work hard. She could eat as much as a man. She's never had somebody help her into a carriage, but she is still a woman. And there are African features on black women. There's skin tones. There's sometimes they broader shoulders or bigger feet, but they're still women. And so to have Michelle Obama, who a lot of black women were able to look at and go, she's shaped up like me. She looks like me, for people then to masculinize her in this country.
And how much of that has been, AI manipulation with all these photos? And we all know the photos we're talking about.
We've seen the dance. There is a dance out there.
A lot of it is.
But I'm just,
a lot of
believe any of it.
You can't believe any, but people believe what they want to believe.
Well, of course they do, but who's driving that divisiveness?
I think that's where it gets scary. There are a few people who really who know this is a racist trope, and then they push it to the surface, and then other people think it's humorous. Other people think it's interesting.
Other people believe it.
Other people believe it. Yeah. And then it goes out. And then somebody who is not racist repeats it or says, have you heard this? And then all of a sudden, I jump on you because you said something racist that was started by somebody else, and you didn't even know.
Right.
All right, folks. That's the end of part 1 with our show with Brian and Darnell Moore. I just want to give them a big thanks for coming. And Chris Montgomery and Chester Bennett as well. All of our sponsors, the Rocky Mount Burger Company, Rocky Mount Smokehouse, Timcast IRL, Safeside Tactical, We Are the Power, all the people that make this possible. We certainly appreciate it. Be sure to also find us on X at Get On Tap. We're also on Instagram and Facebook, but they shadow ban us so much we don't even fool with it that much anymore, other than releasing our shows. But you can also go support us over there on X and in our bio. We have a link for our Patreon, Cash App, and Venmo, which is at Get On Tap. And of course, patreon.com/GetOnTap if you want to subscribe over there. We certainly appreciate everybody. And if you want to hear this show in its entirety, go over there to patreon.com/GetOnTap. And for the $3 a month, you're supporting us, but you get to hear this show and a lot of the ones we split up into 2 before anybody else. So we certainly appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time.
Changing lanes, they pulled him over, found her cocaine. She said, I love you, yes, I love you forevermore. If you tell that policeman that cocaine load is yours, he spent time locked up while she ran around. Everyone knew it, small country town. While he lay rotten, Lord, she was blowing on his door. And the day they released him, really had nowhere to go. Lord, and it's ashes to ashes, and you know it's dust to dust. Just another low down woman that a man can't trust. Day they released him, no one was there. Had she forgotten? Did she still care? He called up her mama, Lord, and these words he heard her cry. good gal left me, and she went away. Now she's gone, I don't worry, because I'm sitting